In October of 2018, I started on a journey to try my best to watch at least one horror movie during the entire month. What started off as a fun little challenge to myself has now turned into a 6-year event that I call HALLOWED. Originally, for the first few years, I called it the October Horror Challenge. However, as the years went by, the name sounded too generic, and during year 4, I decided I needed something a little bit more official sounding for what had now turned into a yearly event. I went through quite a few names, but nothing sounded good until I landed on the simple name Hallowed. It just felt right. A word that simply means regarded as holy, venerated, sacred, which to some describes exactly what Halloween is to them. A time to celebrate the dark arts and demons of the underworld, a time to pay homage to the unsanctity of religion and build on the fears of mortality. It's a time that everyone gets together and, as a whole, we just accept that October is a time for us to celebrate the holiness and sacredness of the unholy and unsacred. So let's dive into the past years of Hallowed and revisit some of the films that I not only watched, but also reviewed in written form on Facebook to all my friends and family. Over the past 6 years, I have watched a total of 215 horror movies, totaling 348 hours and 11 minutes. On average, I have watched about 35.8 horror movies per year during the entirety of this event held in October. At the end of the month, I also reward my watches with a variety of awards ranging from Best Horror Movie, Worst Horror Movie, Biggest Surprise, Biggest Disappointment, Hidden Gem, and Most Disturbing, with the latter four able to have more than one winner. I'm not going to cover all 215 movies, nor am I going to give full-blown movie reviews, but let's start at the beginning and go back to 2018 and see what I was watching. At the beginning, I had no plans for this to become a yearly thing and was just flying by the seat of my pants. I was choosing movies at complete randomness because I wanted to watch them. Nowadays, I plan what I'm going to watch, which usually starts somewhere in May or June. So 2018 was all over the board and we started this whole thing off with a mid-card film by the name of Jigsaw. When it comes to the Saw franchise, I had stopped watching sometime around Saw 5 due to it just being an absolute bloodbath, and to me, just not compelling enough storylines for me to be grossed out for 90 minutes straight. But I had heard Jigsaw was more of a return to their roots, and I decided to give it a go. Overall, it was okay, and I rated it a 6 out of 10. Kind of wish I had some foresight though, knowing that this would be a huge event for me every year, because I definitely wouldn't have started with Jigsaw. When it comes to horror, there are franchises and writers who stand out that the casual movie watcher gravitates towards. One of those names being the master of horror, Stephen King. In 2018, I ended up watching 4 Stephen King movies: Pet Sematary, Rose Red, Children of the Corn, and Gerald's Game. Rose Red is actually one of my favorite horror movies and falls into one of my favorite horror genres, which is big haunted houses. It's also the longest horror movie I've watched during this event, clocking in at just over 4 hours. It's a story of a gigantic house that has quite the storied history. It's haunted by its past, it builds onto itself, and it's constantly changing, which creates a maze-like structure at times. Originally, Rose Red started off as a TV miniseries, but nowadays you can find it stitched together as one long movie. For future events, I really did try to limit the Stephen King movies to just a few a year, as I tend to really enjoy them and didn't want to run out of all the good ones too early. While he does have a lot of subpar movies out there, I still wanted to be able to keep King alive and well for the challenge throughout the years. One of the ongoing gimmicks of Hallowed is that every year, except for the first year, we watch a Friday the 13th movie on October 13th, and we also watch a Halloween franchise movie on October 31st. So what better way to end the month than with the original 1978 Halloween? For following years, we will be watching several different sequels to the franchise in no particular order. Same goes for really any movie that has sequels or prequels. Unless there's an actual storyline that needs to be followed, they are sometimes just chosen at random, as is the case for not only Halloween, but also for franchises like Scream, Friday the 13th, Saw, and Nightmare on Elm Street. When it comes to horror, I'm no discriminator of genre or era. Some of my favorites tend to be from the 50s and 60s, and I'm a huge fan of the Universal monster movies from the 30s and 40s. Matter of fact, The Wolfman from 1941 is in my top 20 favorite movies of all time. So throughout the years, I always try to sprinkle older eras into the mix, whether it's giant monsters, to Godzilla, to the early slashers, to the Universal monsters, and so on. Seeing just how far we have come in terms of not just horror in general, but also the whole aesthetic of horror movies. From graphical to acting to CGI to storytelling, it's amazing to see the transformation over the decades. With 6 years and over 200 movies later, the horror genre never ceases to amaze me with the creativity of writers and directors. Just when you think they've exhausted every possible avenue in such an oversaturated genre, someone comes along with a new idea that keeps the thrill alive. Speaking of old movies, the oldest movie I watched in my 2018 run was Nosferatu from 1922. Interesting story about this one is I was actually at the hospital sitting with my wife who had just given birth to our son. I still needed to watch a movie, and I didn't really want to disturb her or anybody else around us, so I actually chose a silent film and went with Nosferatu. Other older movies I watched in 2018 included House on Haunted Hill from 1959, which starred Vincent Price, Carnival of Souls from 1962, and the 1968 zombie classic Night of the Living Dead. The following years, I began to incorporate more older films as I started digging my feet into what was going to become a yearly tradition. I even started a new category I kept track of, which was movies before 1984, which are basically just movies before I was born. In the world of horror, we have a ton of subgenres, ranging from slasher, to monster, to paranormal, to supernatural, to splatter, to demons, to sci-fi, and even comedy. With comedy, it's nice to get a little palate refresh and lighten the mood after watching something that was unsettling or disturbing. While the count of horror comedies dwindles throughout the coming years, I actually ended up watching 8 comedy horrors in year 1. These movies included Little Evil, Scary Movie 1, Scary Movie 3, The Toxic Avenger, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, Dracula Dead and Loving It, and last, while this one might be a little bit controversial, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Look, if you've ever seen the movie, you can see where I'm coming from on this one.
Bubba's been playing with her. Bubba likes her. Bubba's got a girlfriend. 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 Bubba's got a girlfriend.
It's so hysterical and over the top. Doing some reading on it, seems that the director knew he couldn't top the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre and went in the complete opposite direction with the sequel. In fact, it was so bad, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 won the award of Worst of 2018. I ended up ranking this one a 1 out of 10, and I really can't see an argument to make me change my mind on it. I absolutely hated it. But believe it or not, this isn't even the lowest score I've given out over the years. 2021 would introduce me to a movie that I hated even more. Speaking of awards, during the inaugural run, there were only 3 to be given out. This included the best of, the worst of, and the biggest surprise. While we already covered the winner of the prestigious worst horror movie of the year, which films won the other 2? Well, I'll start with the winner of the biggest surprise, which can actually have multiple winners. The winners of the biggest surprise of 2018 award went to The Boy, The Collector, and Pumpkinhead. So who won the Best of 2018 award? The winner for Best of 2018 was none other than the 1975 classic, Jaws. Now we're here at the end. And what were some of the others I watched in 2018? Well, here you go. I'm going to list all the movies I watched along with the ratings I gave them. Here's what I watched during Hallowed in the year of 2018.